Good day, my name is Amy Shmamy, and I am not Hyperian. I discovered Hyperianism about 3 years ago.
G'day monads, my name's Adam Carl, also known as Antichrisis, and I was Hyperian for about 2.5 years.
Hi, my name is Anthony, also known as ZeroIIOne. I was Hyperian for 5 years, in which I was a middle circle member for the most part.
Morgue, or Corey I should say, and I were part of a members-only goth community in Hollywood. This community was full of brilliant artists, and I tried to support the work of as many people in this community that my pocketbook would allow. When I became aware of fellow member Corey's book, I bought it. The material blew me away. I've been atheist for many years, but I believe that there's more to this world than existing 1 minute and not existing the next minute. So the material made perfect sense to me, and I was fully on board from day one.
I'd been diving deep into philosophy channels on YouTube when I came across Morgue's videos. They definitely caught my attention. In retrospect, when you consider the original source of this material, it's no wonder I found it so compelling.
After reading the amazing God series by Mike Hockney and the books that followed that following year, I came to social media and was drawn to Hyperian's early videos promoting the meritocratic revolution, idealist philosophy, and of course, ontological mathematics.
I met with Corey several times to discuss how we could help the movement utilizing my strengths.
I originally got involved via the Outer Circle Facebook page, and by about mid-2020 I was posting and interacting a lot. The following year, in April 21, I took the Middle Circle test and got accepted. From that point on, I was immersed. I felt like I'd come home to my long-lost family. Someone who is introverted and kind of weird like me, the whole Hyperian culture thing wasn't just cool and dark, but also had the whole underlying rational, mathematical, philosophical allure. It was very appealing, but the appeal was also the community and what I would call the illusion of unity.
I believed Hyperianism was a true meritocratic movement. I believed I could assist promoting, educating, and as well as defending the God series subject matter that Hyperianism was built from.
I noticed just a few months in that some Hyperians were aggressive and borderline bullies when it came to spreading the word of Hyperianism. I have a large following on social media, and some Hyperians were suggesting that I change my focus from non-monogamy to Hyperianism, which was not something I was willing to do at the time. So I started pulling back then.
Red flags, fuck. Hindsight is a bitch. Where were the debates? Where was the Ubermensch Hyperian dismantling Christians and scientists alike with their superior reason and critical thinking skills? Where were the interviews? Why did the Hyperian source turn on the super chats? Weren't they getting paid by Corey? 5 years of videos and live streams, and where was the actual progress? Remember the Hyperian movies that they took down? Remember the outro to the second movie? It was a voiceover with a hardcore reference to Morgue and his rise to watcher status within the ranks of a secret society. Again, in retrospect, I understand why they removed these movies from the Hyperian source website. The explanation was they're outdated. Outdated my ass. Then finally, when the two best moderators up and left, I switched straight into what the fuck mode. That's when I started to dig and read. Rabbit hole indeed.
Where do I start? 3 main points. 1, the lack of defending meritocratic values, the philosophical foundations, ontological mathematics was practically non-existent right from the beginning. Any defence was held in contempt. Many written complaints, both direct and public, were ignored or just dampened down. At one point, Corey himself created the secret TRT anti-troll group, in which encouraged a positive anti-troll. It was anything but. In fact, Corey's suggestion was to encourage promoting more Morgue content rather than tackle the issues head on. It didn't last long, of course. It had no impact whatsoever. 2. The lack of real-world boots-to-the-ground activism became apparent next. Some were actively spreading knowledge, off their own backs and funds, mind you. Some were often scrutinised and dampened down in the fear of spreading the wrong message. And other hardliners who understood the message well, there's a fear of it's not a good look, according to Corey. Clearly there was no round tables on these matters. Everything had to be scrutinised and approved by Corey and Susan. It's a dictatorship. 3. The latter years, the content began to die dramatically. The lack of rational idealist and meritoric values had practically disappeared, especially from the MorgueOfficial content, which declined into a confusing mishmash of woke gobbledygook. The audience in which Corey began to attract had zero interest in the hard subjects or any real education subject for that matter. I do know several Hyperians, like myself, backed with Mike Hockney's God series and related books, hung on to the bitter end, hoping to step up and bring some more smarten the fuck up important topics to the table.
In the earlier days, there was a lot of discussion of other material, particularly the God series. So I bought the God game and read it, and it was clear to me that Corey's book was basically just a dumbed-down version of Hockney's and other people's material. However, at the time, I thought he had the blessing of the AC to use their content in this way, but I see now that I was wrong.
I first bought the Kindle version of the God Game by Mike Hockney a couple of years ago. God series was a hot topic in the Outer Circle group. Awesome book. It literally blew my mind. Corey's books are like the kindergarten version of this book. Also found the AC website around the same time. At that point, I had an understanding of where the foundation of Hyperianism had come from.
I discovered the original source material at the Armageddon Conspiracy website back in 2011. Then I read The God Game by Mike Hockney. Wow. By the end of the first chapter, I knew this is it. This is where it's at. No bullshit, no Hootie and the Blowfish. That couldn't be clearer in my mind. If you haven't already, I recommend at least read the first chapter. If you're not on the edge of your seat engrossed with excitement, there's something wrong with you.
When I learned that Christina was no longer with Hyperianism, and then I found out Rowan was also gone, I realized I had to do some research and figure out what's happening here. When I discovered that the AC not only did not support Corey, but accused him of outright plagiarism, I realized I probably made a grave error in believing him. His response to Sinclair was so cringy. I read Sinclair's book, and I do not believe it is the work of a racist or homophobe. Corey took things out of context because he was desperate. But let's talk about the treatment of Christina and Rowan. Someone called the police on Rowan and the FBI on another former Hyperian. I believe it was Corey or one of his minions. Who else could it be? And even if it wasn't, he hasn't said anything about it, meaning he's sanctioning it. This is how you treat people who devoted years of their lives to your movement for free, mind you. Turns out it's not even your movement, Corey. Shame on you.
I actually read The Dark Triad by Steve Madison earlier in the year. I think my spider senses started tingling around that time. Then when the Pi started posting their opposition to Hyperianism and drew that line in the sand, I chose. I'm already comfortable with being ex-Hyperian, and I don't need a fucking hug or a fucking sword for that matter, and I'm angry. angry about the deception. How can Hyperianism possibly continue without the foundation it was built on?
I stepped back from Hyperianism many times, and like many, had the gut feeling Corey was not doing his duty promoting the God series, the ideologies he built his social media presence on. On one occasion, Corey actually replied to one of my complaints. I received a lame Patreon fan video that did not address anything at all but stroking his inflated ego. I reluctantly stuck with Hyperianism, believing it was backed by the authors of the God series. Silly me. David Sinclair's book, Without the Mob, There Is No Circus, put the final nail in the coffin, so to speak. I highly recommend it.
I have spent about $3,000 being a Patreon supporter of Corey.
Patreon and YouTube was costing me about $50 a month, plus t-shirts, trinkets, books, sucker chats. I didn't go down as badly as some. What I was spent was nothing in comparison. It's still cringy though. Corey does not need your fucking money to pay his rent. Stop it.
Over the years, these Patreon donations sure did add up. It's close to $6,000.
To any Hyperian who may see this, please stop your blind faith in this person. You are a lemming. You are the very thing Corey despises. If you do the reading, and if you think logically and reasonably, you should see there is something very, very wrong here.
Misrepresentation appears to be the new Hyperian zeitgeist. I am, of course, referring to the statement on the Hyperian source website. If you haven't read Without the Mob, There Is No Circus by David Sinclair, and I mean the whole thing, then your argument against the AC is irrational and based on hearsay and appeals to authority. Henpecked quotes from this book are being presented out of context. Challenge yourself. Be objective. Ask yourself why a large number of very intelligent people have hyper-exited. What is the sufficient reason for that? Reassess your biases. Is there meritocracy within Hyperianism? Is the leader of Hyperianism a communal narcissist? Feel free to look that up and start ticking boxes. From Without the Mob, There Is No Circus, and I quote, "Here's another simple way to identify a cult. Could the movement continue seamlessly with a meritocratic individual from its ranks promoted to the leadership role? Or would the movement collapse instantly if the current leader were no longer around? If so, it's a cult. It's always the same. Every influencer is in the cult game." Unquote.
Do not give Corey your money, and do not waste your time and effort supporting him or his weird ideas. I learned nothing about merit, idealism, or ontological mathematics from Corey at all. So Hyperians, ask yourself this. Do you follow Corey or is botched teaching stolen from the God series? Be honest now. If the answer is Corey, you are in a cult. If it's the teachings, then go straight to the original, the God series with a capital G by Mike Hockney, the Truth series with a capital T by Dr. Thomas Stark. If these books initially appear intimidating by the intellectual scope of the subjects entailed, pick any book that may suit your taste. Be sure to check out the books by Dr. Cody Newman, Jack Tanner, Steve Madison, David Sinclair, and of course, Michael Force's book, The Case for Meritocracy. Dare to know.